Welcome back to Just Chattin', and this is the series of videos we do on Thursday and Sunday evenings just for our own entertainment. So, as I was preparing to sit down and film this video, I did just a quick check to make sure nothing was breaking news, and well, something was. Apparently, the investigation into the allegations that Nutmeg bullied her staff has been concluded, and the information is not being released. And my goodness, everybody is up in arms about that, both sides. And we're going to talk about that a little when we come back. So, what does it mean that the information is not being released? We should start with that. This was a human resources investigation. In other words, it would be a private workplace matter, and it would be private, so people could feel free to say whatever they needed to say, to ask other employees to come in and give their opinions. In other words, there's a lot of privacy that needs to be protected in a situation like this. And I'm talking about privacy for the victims of the alleged bullying and for their coworkers who may be called upon to give their impressions of what happened in the workplace. It's not just a question of protecting the perpetrator. It's a question of protecting the victims and protecting the otherwise innocent bystanders that may have been reluctantly roped into an involvement. I totally support the fact that this was done privately. I also support the fact that the information is not being made public. Seriously, did we think it would be? I certainly didn't. Buckingham Palace is not going to release information like this. Employers generally do not. So how are we ever going to know what's going on? Well, if the allegations had been substantiated in the investigation, and the investigation was handled by a private law firm, if they had been substantiated, we may, not necessarily, we may see some actual charges filed. So it could be handled in the criminal courts. Now, that's assuming that the bullying was egregious and hit the point of involving illegal activities. Let me give you an example, and I'm not saying this happened in this situation. It's just an example. I'm running around bullying my staff and I hit someone. It's a crime. Someone could bring charges. A lot of bad things could happen to me for taking a whack at one of my employees. That's one possibility. Another possibility is the palace may settle with some of these workers. In other words, they may just walk away with some private amount of compensation. It's not hush money, although I'm tempted to call it that. It would be compensation for whatever injuries they sustained while working for the palace. That would be a reasonable conclusion. There could be civil suits. If the inquiry determined that people were abused on the job, they could take it to the civil courts. There could also be discrete informal compensation. Now, discrete informal compensation would be landing in a very nice job somewhere else. Getting a sterling letter of recommendation, things like that. So, will we know for sure what the outcome was if any of these things happen? No. We could speculate. If somebody in the palace, for example, ends up working directly for the Queen after having been allegedly abused by Nutmeg, I would say offhand the investigation would have resulted in a determination that that person had not lied, because after all, if that person had fabricated a story, they wouldn't be working for the Queen. So we will be able to figure some of this out by inference, but it is by inference only. I don't believe they're ever going to just come right out and say, we determined this was true, we determined that wasn't, or we determined this was. Interestingly enough, both Nutmeg's fans and Nutmeg's non-fans seem to be pretty upset about this. Nutmeg's fans have taken to social media saying, look, they made this all up, and now they're burying it. Because I guess they're assuming that they are burying information indicating that Nutmeg had been exonerated. Oh my, that's not very likely, is it? If, in fact, Nutmeg had been completely exonerated and there had been a smoking gun somewhere. In other words, somebody found an email saying, let's all get together and falsely accuse her of workplace harassment. That would be a smoking gun. If that happened, yeah, that probably would have been made public. Because otherwise, Buckingham Palace would be responsible for covering up a fraud, and it's very unlikely that they would stoop that low. Mind you, I am not saying that these people are not capable of dusting a few things under the rug. Of course they are. But somewhere between dusted under the rug and covering up crime, there's a gray area here that's vast. So I don't understand why Nutmeg's fans are upset that it's being kept quiet. The most likely reason to keep it quiet is because there was a bit of fire where all that smoke was. And it's not likely the palace is going to want any member of the royal family, even one as unpopular as Nutmeg, to be publicly outed as an abuser of her employees, a workplace bully. Now, it's their job to cover up for the royal family and to make sure the best face is put on things. So I would have to say, Nutmeg's fans carrying on about they should be entitled to public information. Oh, be careful what you wish for, people. Because if the information had been favorable, there's a much greater chance that it would have been released. Nutmeg's non-fans, of course, are taking the position exactly opposite that the royal family is covering up for one of its own, even though, obviously, she is far, far away, out of sight, out of mind. They are still going to wrap her in their cloak of protection. We may never know what really happened. And as I say, I'm okay with that. I really am. There are some things that are private by nature, and anything that has the potential to bring negative, unwanted publicity to people who have already been victimized, assuming, of course, there was legitimacy to the complaints. That would be wrong. To bring unwanted publicity to their friends and coworkers who might have had to participate in the investigation of the matter simply because they heard something, they observed at the workplace, a friend confided in them, whatever. That would be wrong too. And one thing I will tell you is those of us who have run afoul of the Sussex Squad can certainly tell you these people are vicious. And they are out of control. I don't have any problem with a process that protects people from the potential backlash of those crazies. And of course, there's the potential backlash of the people who are not fans of Nutmeg. Yeah, she is a polarizing woman. People either love her or hate her, and the middle ground is very, very tiny. There are probably like 4 people out there who are going to say, I don't know who she is. I think it's a good thing that this has been investigated. I think it's a good thing that it has been kept quiet. I think it is up to those of us who have a few functioning brain cells to read what has come out and say to ourselves, human resource policies were changed as a result of this investigation. Wonder what that means, and infer what we will. Because the fact that policies were changed absolutely does suggest that people were injured in some way. And it further suggests that perhaps HR policies were not sufficient to protect them from that kind of injury. That's what it suggests to me. So I'm content with that. I really am. I don't need the validation of finding out that Nutmeg was unkind to the people who worked for her. My goodness, I hope it's not true. I wouldn't bet the farm on it, but I hope it's not true. So, I have to say, the results were exactly what I expected, that it would be investigated, that something would have been uncovered, hence the changes in policies, and that no one would be willing to say what. So, we've got to remember that the royal family is an institution, but it's also a family. And obviously, the family is going to strive to, well, put the best face on things. I get that. All right. So, we're going to walk away from that. We'll see what happens if we see what happens. So let's take a quick look at one of the topics I intended to cover in this video before that whole story broke about investigation concluded, no public results. Well, I need to start by doing a little explaining because although I'm sure everyone in the UK is going to be familiar with this, I'm equally sure that very few people in the US will be. 5 years ago, there was a major fire at a housing project in the UK. They called this council housing. We would call it projects. Low-income housing, subsidized housing, high-rise building, bad fire. More than 70 people died. Obviously, many more people were bounced out of their homes, and the residents set up a community kitchen, presumably as a way of keeping the displaced residents fed while they were homeless. Wonderful. Good work, great little charity, and apparently Nutmeg did have a couple of meetings with these people when she was a member of the royal family. So, royal engagements, I guess you could call them. Well, recently, William and Catherine went over, made an appearance with this Grenfell cooking community kitchen. I'm not sure exactly what it is. They made an appearance on what I imagine is the anniversary of the fire, and Nutmeg left a voicemail for them. Well, the people at the community kitchen threw the voicemail story onto their Instagram, and of course then the media picks it up and it's PR and la la la. It's sort of the non-photo op photo op, because the photo they showed of Nutmeg was some 5 years old. And there was a lot of backlash. A lot of people criticized this soup kitchen for making, in effect, a public relations statement for Nutmeg. Well, they shut down their Instagram site. Now, personally, I think that's a good thing. If you can't take the heat, get out of the kitchen. And I'm sorry, that was an intentional pun. It's not their job to get involved in the politics of the UK or the social politics of who's in and who's out in the royal family. If they are going to take a favorable position regarding one of the least well-liked members of the British family, and that would be Nutmeg, she is second from the bottom, beaten out only by Prince Andrew, you're going to get some blowback. There's no question about it. I don't care if you are a soup kitchen. Good heavens, I don't care if you are a busload of nuns. If you get involved in a controversial, polarizing person's publicity, and I think we can all agree that Nutmeg is controversial and polarizing, you start putting out favorable statements for someone, yeah, it's going to be backlash. There's no two ways around it. Now, maybe they weren't expecting it. They should have been. Maybe they weren't. I saw some of the comments that were published in the BuzzFeed story, none of which were really very bad. And all I can say is, if this was the sort of thing that got them to shut down their Instagram site, they've got very thin skins indeed, because you'd be amazed at some of the stuff people have said about me, because I do videos critical of Nutmeg. And the fact is, you can't take a public stand on Nutmeg one way or the other without expecting backlash. My backlash comes from the Sussex squad, so it's comical and easy to dismiss. I think, this is my favorite so far was the person who said, I think you have a crush on Prince Harry. See, it's struggling, but I'm not laughing. Yeah, this viewer thought that that's why I am critical of Nutmeg, because really my heart goes pitter-pat over that single-digit IQ. Yeah, you found me out, babe. Stupidity. That is my hot button. I am just desperate to hook up with a man who can't tie his own shoes. Yeah. That's the level of stuff I get. It's easy for me to ignore it and dismiss it because, because, you know, but is it newsworthy? No. And the whole focus of the story, of course, is that the evil anti-nutmeg people forced this wonderful soup kitchen to close down their Instagram site because they made such bad comments. Good Lord. I mean, seriously, anybody who is taking public statements to social media on controversial topics is going to get some trash comments. I'm sorry if they don't like it, but this is one of the more amusing non-stories out there. And naturally, because it was Ellie Hall, she spun the story completely and threw Boozy into it. He came out with a report saying that there was a conspiracy to defame Nutmeg and just the usual Sussex Squad crap, which frankly, I am just getting a laugh out of at this point. And that is considered newsworthy. Oh my. However, what I thought I would do is counter that. There was an article written in the Spectator. Someone sent me a link to it, by the way, because I was having trouble finding it, mostly because the information I had about the article didn't have a thorough citation. In other words, they just said article Spectator, and that was the end of it. So someone did send that to me. Thank you, by the way. And because clearly the pro-nutmeg camp is trying very hard to shut this article down, I have the full text for you. That's going to be our outgoing slideshow for this video. It's going to be the full text of that article. Usually when I do this, I read the articles to you, just so you don't have to go through the bother of reading it to yourself. I know reading is quite a strain for a lot of us, especially as we get older, or in my case, like always. I was never going to be able to read this one without cracking up. Never. I challenge you to do the same. Just go ahead, read, see if you can get through a paragraph without laughing. It's savage. It's beautiful. I think this is fantastic. So, absolutely want to share that with you. So, before we get out with our little article slideshow, let's just quick recap. 1, the investigation into the alleged palace bullying by Nutmeg is concluded. There were changes in the HR policies resulting from the investigation. The results are not going to be made public, and in fact, they never were. So, take what you will from the fact that changes have been made. 2, a soup kitchen got a phone call from Nutmeg. How generous of her, oh my. She didn't even send a check. Most of us drop $5 or $10 in their little donation basket on a regular basis, and we don't have a fraction of the money Nutmeg has. So take from that what you will. They had to shut down their Instagram account because they got too much of a backlash for supporting the second least popular member of the British royal family. And this was apparently a surprise to one and all. Oh my. And on our way out, we are going to have this. The article is great. If you don't like the idea of reading it on the screen as it's going to be presented, follow the link in the video notes, but for sure, read this article. You don't want to miss it. Okay, that's what I have for you. I will be back on Thursday with more Just Chattin'. And at this point, by the way, because Nutmeg has interrupted my normal stash of video topics, I have a lot to choose from. And maybe we'll go to one of the older video topics that I was never able to get to because our publicity-hungry Nutmeg somehow managed to do something that dragged me away, kicking and screaming, from the topic I really wanted to present. All right, I will see you all next Thursday. Enjoy the article.